two veteran special operations soldiers, Billy Levine and Timothy Dumis, one of whom, Billy Levine, was actually a member of Delta Force. And both of them were deeply involved in trafficking drugs in and around Fort Bragg. Um, and the investigation, or my investigation into their deaths, leads me into down a lot of different rabbit holes, all of which are united by the common theme of drug trafficking in the U.S. military, particularly in the special forces and other, elite formations, including Navy SEALs.
Including the Navy SEALs. See, even the Navy SEALs are involved in this.
Or
Interesting.
even, I mean, the Navy SEALs have a lot more criminal history. I mean, part of what was interested me about the book was that, or in writing the book, was that it focuses almost entirely on Army Special Forces. There's been so much written about the Navy SEALs problems, going back to 2017 or so. Lots of different cases of murder, drug stuff. Now, the drug stuff didn't get quite as much publicity, but there's a lot of cases of that. I interviewed, let's see, at least two ex-Navy SEALs who went to prison for trafficking drugs. There were other cases, a guy in South America, or excuse me, Central America, who's stationed there with the SEALs, who was trafficking drugs up here. So, and then of course, there's cases like Eddie Gallagher, high-profile cases of SEALs, behaving badly, including the two SEALs who killed that dude in Mali. He killed that Army Special Forces soldier at Green Beret in Mali. Logan Melder was his name. So actually, the Navy SEALs have come in for a lot of bad press over the last 5 years or so, whereas Army Special Forces is usually a lot more chill, a lot more quiet, a lot more low profile. They really don't write books and go on TV. Delta Force, I should say, not so much the Green Berets, but Delta is real quiet. You never hear about them ever. And
Yeah.
so the fact that this one guy that was murdered on Bragg was a member of Delta was one of the main things that drew me into the story.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. When did you first hear about it and decide, you know what, I need to look further into this?
Just read it in the news that those two guys had been killed, and then also saw that, the police said, oh, well, it was a drug deal gone wrong. So I'm thinking, a drug deal gone wrong on Fort Bragg involving an active duty Delta Force operator? Excuse me. In addition to that, the article disclosed that Levine, the Delta guy, had previously killed somebody at his house at Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is right by Fort Bragg, and that it had been immediately ruled a justified homicide. So at that point, I realized that this whole thing stinks to high heaven. There's got to be more here. And yeah, sure enough, there was a lot more.
Damn. So first, walk me through what, and again, I'm going to ask these questions. If there's some point where you're like, I'd rather someone read the book for that information, no big deal. Just let me know. But if you don't mind, can you walk me through kind of the murders and what happened December 2022? Excuse me, December 2020?
I can tell you what the CID believes
Yeah.
happened. No one really knows. And that's, it's still an unsolved mystery to this day. I think it's important to emphasize. Now there's things happening in that realm. People have, there's court cases that are going on. My investigation remains ongoing, but here's what Army CID thinks happened. So the other guy, Timothy Dumis, it's easy to think about it mentally because one of them is black and one of them is white, not to reduce them to their respective races, but that's just one difference that they had. So the black guy, Timothy Dumis, was a support soldier. He worked for the special forces for many years. He was in that world. He had deployed lots of times attached to JSOC, but he himself was not a Green Beret. He was a supply officer, and he was deeply involved in all sorts of military crime. I've read his state separation packet. He was stealing guns from the military. He was trafficking drugs at a high level. He was diverting prescription pills from the Army. He had his fingers in every type of little military crime that goes on, kind of the dark underbelly of some of these bases where guys are making money on the side in a bunch of different ways. Another thing that Dumas apparently did for money was kill people for hire. And
What?
yeah, so I've interviewed people who he offered to kill, for money. And the CID, agents that I interviewed also told me the same thing. They believed that Dumas worked as a hitman. And they think that Dumas teamed up with somebody who has not been identified to kill Billy Levine. They killed him someplace off base. Um, and then they wrapped his body up in a blanket or tarp, brought him onto the base to dump his body in this lake called Lake MacArthur.